Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about data analytics, and we're exploring the idea of entity resolution. We're going to find out what that is and how it can help you handle your data more effectively. To discuss that, I'm joined by a major industry expert. With me is Jeff Jonas, CEO, founder, and chief scientist at Senzing. Jeff, good to have you with us today.
It's good to be here. I'm working on a cold. I'm working on getting over a cold. I'm in Sacramento, and I have an Ironman in 2 days. So if I start sniveling, it's not because you're making me sad.
So you're not only doing an Ironman, you're doing an Ironman with an impending cold.
Well, I'm on the tail end,
Yeah.
But
all right. Well,
yeah, I have a cold, and I'll race with a cold. You can't race with a flu.
Okay.
That's actually dangerous, but cold.
You are an Ironman, sir. I might have to give you credit on that. So I definitely, we want to talk about entity resolution, which is there's an irony involved in that topic. We'll get to that, but first, I see on your bio page on the Senzing website, it calls you the big data whisperer, which I really like, and no less an expert than the National Geographic refers to you as the wizard of big data.
Yeah.
Those are some big shoes. So given that, I mean, what is big? What is big in big data this year? You're supposed to know.
By the way, that does remind me, somebody told me some struggles they were having with data, and then they said they called it big data, and it was in a spreadsheet, okay? Right. I just looked at them and said, look, if it's in a spreadsheet, it's not big data.
Oh, is that true? If it's that's interesting. Why is it not big data? Like we have an Excel spreadsheet with 5,000 cells crammed full of data. Actually, Excel is the #1 big data application, I think, to this day, oddly enough. So why is that not big
manipulate data? But when I think of big, I think of hundreds of millions of records, 1 billion records. Now, some would use the word big to just mean diverse data.
Right.
Like lots of diversity in data, unstructured data, videos, right, text. And so sometimes people refer to that. But when I hear the word big data, I think about the things you can do within a diverse and sufficiently large set of data to make higher quality predictions.
Well, maybe, and I'm making too fine a point here, but maybe big data is a chunk of data, even just a mere 5,000 cells in an Excel spreadsheet. And the point being that we're going to try to glean insight from it rather than just gather it together and look at it. I mean, maybe the gleaning of the insight is maybe that's the whole point of big data / data analytics.
Well, I think you can have small data and get some. Well, the question is how big. I guess it's in the eye of the beholder. If you're struggling with it and you need to do a lot of manual stuff, and there's 50,000 rows, probably does feel like big data, right? Like, it's going to take months. Okay, fine. It's big data. But for me, big data is like, hey, we have 4,000 data sources. We have 1 billion records. We're trying to get a better understanding of 100 million people so that we can better understand who's going to be traveling when and where and give them travel promotions right before their trip. Right. Like, okay, that's bigger data.
Yeah, right. Big and even financially resourceful data. So, all right. So we know what big data is. What's here in 2022? What's making a difference in the world of big data and data analytics? What's a trend that you see going on out there?
Well, aside from entity resolution, what we're going to get to, which is always been there and growing in people's awareness, I would say this, though, more generally, is when your algorithms stop giving you enough accuracy, you're still getting too many false positives and too many false negatives. And you're struggling to get much more traction in accuracy gain. It's probably not the algo. It's probably you're lacking a sufficient observation space. And I think of it as fantasy analytics. Every now and then I'll talk to somebody and go, okay, what's your business goals? They'll explain their business goals. And I go, great. What data are you going to use to solve that? And they go, ABC. And I go, ABC? That's all? Not even a divine being could use ABC and make these predictions that you want. And so you have to widen your observation space and get more data. And often that data is in-house. It's data you already own. It's the yellow puzzle pieces over there.
Wait, so it's not the algorithm, but actually it sounds like what you're saying is it's the human, and the human has not created a certain judgment context around the algo. Is that what's going on?
Well, no, I would say it's the humans. It needs a little more inspiration at times to say, well, don't you think some data over there and that data over there would help the algos do a better job? Algos are great, but when they putter out, when they're redlining, when your deck of PhDs say that over the next 3 years, they can maybe get 1 or 2 more % out, and you're thinking that's not even close to be making us feel more competitive. I'm
Right.
just saying add some more fuel, and fuel is diversity in the data. More data, diverse data.
And but aren't we also, don't we also need to ask better questions, the more relevant questions of that data, whether it's bigger or not?
You definitely could have humans thinking of other questions, although I'm a fan of something called I call data finds data, relevance finds you.
Oh.
And the reason is, here's where this happened. I was talking to a counterterrorism intelligence analyst shortly after 9/11. And I said, what do you wish you could have anything? If you could have anything, what do you wish you could have? She said, I wish I could get answers to my questions faster. Well, I mean, that's a reasonable thing.
Well, sure. That's, yeah. Of
Terrorism
course,
intelligence.
of course, that's what she wants.
Yeah. But it felt insane to me, to tell you the truth. It was a 2-move checkmate, really, because I look at her and I go, hey, man, what if it wasn't a smart question today, but if you ask the question in a few weeks as more data's, arrived? What if it's a great question in 2 weeks? She goes, oh, that could happen. And I said, what are the chances that you could ask every smart question every day? She looked at me completely defeated and just said, I can't. And I remember I should have been thinking we're all going to die because she's a counterintelligence analyst,
Right.
But really, it popped in my head that there's a type of system, and I've been really fascinated with this in my own work, my own architecture journey, is systems where the data finds the data and the things that are relevant find you. It's systems that help direct human attention. And
Well,
that's interesting. It means the data is the question.
well, let me make sure I understand something. The data finds the relevant data finds you. That sounds pretty optimistic to me, actually. I think there's probably a bunch of companies out there that are struggling. They're not, the relevant data isn't finding them.
I know. I'm talking about an aspiration here, though. Like, if you could wish for something, do you want a bank of people that have to think of questions, but because the question might not have been the perfect question until a few more days or next month, they have to ask them again? Or what if there could be a different kind of future? And really, the way to think about it is, to me, it's like a transaction is like another puzzle piece. A puzzle piece shows up. It's got no context. It's just a single piece. It's like a pixel. And then the thing you do is say, hey, how does this piece of thing I just observed relate to the other things that we've already know? So it's like figuring out where the puzzle fits on the table, in the half assembled puzzle. And after the thing that's happening, you go, hey, how does this relate to the other things I know? Punch the puzzle piece in somewhere. Then you look at the other puzzle pieces around and you go, is that important? Should we tell somebody? That's data finding data.
Well, then let me ask the same question in a different way. If there's three parts of the system, there's the actual data platform, there's the humans running it, and then there's the data being fed into that data platform. Which of those three elements typically is the weakness occurring in? The data going in, the humans running it, or the platform itself?
I don't really think it's the platform or the humans. I think it's the inspiration about what kinds of data sets one should bring to bear. Like, why are you ignoring the blue and the magenta puzzle pieces from over there? Don't you think those would help you make better decisions to find synthetic identities, or to, better do a better job preventing insider trading? And so it's really about what observation space are you harnessing, and what is your ability to make sense of it? It's really about sense making, and that actually drives to. At IBM, I was the chief scientist of context computing, and context is better understanding something by taking into account the things around it.
Right.
And so if you want to understand your data, you want to understand the pieces around it. And the first form of context is entity resolution. If you think it's three people, each with a transaction, but it's really one person, you got the wrong context. You can't make good predictions.
Well, let's dive into entity resolution and how it helps with data management. I think the interesting thing about entity resolution is it's also called duplicate deletion, which might almost be more.
It has, that's the problem. That's the irony, isn't it?
Yeah,
it
has many terms, which it itself is a system of eliminating duplicates. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. So, and it itself has many versions, so it needs to be eliminated. The duplicates of its own name need to be duplicated. But anyway, what is entity resolution, as in your words?
It's recognizing that two records are about the same person, even though they're described differently. They don't have a join key. It's like they both don't have the exact same driver's license number. So, I mean, that's easy to, I'll say that's entity resolution, but it's not a join key. But, so the things about entity resolution is you're trying to take two records. One might say Elizabeth, one might say Beth. The month and day of the date of birth might be transposed. The address is super messy.
Right.
And then conversely, sometimes records are so close to the same, but they're different. I could show you two records that have tons of differences. You'd be like, those are the same people. Then I could show you two records that are identical, except one's is JR versus SR for junior senior. And you'd be like, oh, those are different people. Isn't that funny? You can twiddle a whole bunch of bits and be like, yeah, same. And you can twiddle one bit. So entity resolution is figuring out same, possibly the same. And then if to do it well, you have to build a graph and know kind of who's related to who have you decided it's not the same or a possible match, because it helps future matching. So it's building an entity resolved network or graph, if you will.
Is entity resolution a major problem in data analytics systems these days, or is it a minor little thing, or is it really mucking up the entire system?
It's just everywhere. I don't know if you spend enough time with somebody and they get the glasses on, they look around and they went like, I mean, like, just to give you an example, you have duplicates in your phone, I'll bet. You know, the first time you met them, you put it in one way, the second. Well, that's an entity resolution problem. You didn't recognize the duplicate. Imagine that. You're the only curator on your own phone. Imagine a bank or a social service agency or an insurance company.
Right.
How many duplicates they've got. This is the bane of challenges that come downstream on lower quality predictions. That's why people send me hair care product ads, you know. But it's in MDM, KYC, AML, CDPs, insider threat, vendor supply chain, sanction screening. I mean, pick something. Basically, if it's a business information system with people in it, prospects in it, customers or prospects, people or companies, vendors, job applicants, those are all entity resolution is needed to bring, meaning to that. It's about expert counting, to tell you the truth. If you can't count, you can't predict. Is it 20 cases of Omicron reported, 20 reported cases, or one case reported 20 times? Like literally, you can't count, you can't predict. The thing about it, just to go on for a second, is some companies have 10, 20, 30, 50 people working on this, 100 people.
Oh.
This should just be a mundane little data quality thing. So that's what I'm trying to do in the world. That's what my company's trying to do, is like, hey man, would you write your own spell checker? Just plug in a spell check API. Same with entity resolution.
Well, all right. Well, let's dig into Senzing. I mean, I want to. The real question is, how do we deal with entity resolution? How do we work with it and get rid of all those duplicates? That's what Senzing does. And talk to me about how Senzing achieves this.
What we do is Senzing is a SDK. It's for developers. We don't build cars, we build transmissions. So people building systems will have an entity resolution component. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't. Maybe they want it on the cloud, maybe they want it real time. And people download our SDK, and in 3 API calls. It all runs local, by the way. There's no privacy issues with data flowing to us. It's not a SaaS hosted service. It's locally hosted. It's on your cloud or prem. And they just compile it into their Java, Python, or C project, and you pass it a JSON message with names and addresses and phones and emails and whatever kind of bits you got about the identity, and it'll tell you who's who might be who, and who's related. We're just trying to make it trivial, work on more important things.
Well, can you give an example of how it has worked, or an actual use case? Like how is Senzing, how's that solution really made a difference for a company?
One of my team's favorite examples is a nonprofit that runs it. It's called ericstates.org, and they are modernizing voter registration in America. People move and then forget to unregister.
Right.
That's illegal, by the way, if you've ever moved and forgot to unregister. Oh, you lawbreaker.
Oh.
But then you get election rolls that get longer and longer and longer because people haven't unregistered. So this nonprofit serving blue and red states uses entity resolution from, I think it's 36 states. It matches voter data and DMV data. It's run by the election officials. And it allows election offices to reach out to voters and say, it seems like you moved. Did you move? And do you want to still be registered? That's an entity resolution thing, because you had somebody that's shown up in a different state. Now it's got a different driver's license. You're trying to figure out if it's the same person in your state.
Do you think that the companies and organizations running data analytics programs are fully aware of problem with duplicate entries like this, or is it like they're going on where mainly out of it?
I've been thinking about this recently. I'm going to test it out right now. There's two kinds of people in this world. There are people that know they have entity resolution problems and know if they fixed it would fix a lot of things.
Right.
And then there's everybody else.
So you're saying most people are not fully cognizant of the importance of entity resolution?
You'll find places in the organization that are fully aware of that. At the moment, the way we view the world at Senzing is we're not in the education business. If one hasn't yet realized it, we're not trying to educate them. There's a lot of companies doing entity resolution. We're just letting them talk about why it's important. At Senzing, we're available for those that kind of know what it is. They know why they need it. Now they're trying to figure out how to do it real time, higher scale. They want to be able to do it maybe for anti-money laundering, or better know your customer problems. We're really, really good at catching bad guys, clever bad people that try to obscure their identity. It's a subtlety in entity resolution, is that there's, I'll say, a legacy method where you're trying to take a record and matching it to another record you've seen. But clever bad people don't use the same name, address, and phone on every record. Like only the idiots would do that.
Right.
Yeah. But so if you want to catch clever bad people who are, using their middle name and fudging up a little bit on their date of birth and, getting a digit off, you need to be able to do something called entity-centric learning, where you learn the different names, you learn their nickname, you learn the different addresses, you learn that you've been using 3 days of births. But the first time I built a robust version of this was for Vegas. It was called NORA, Non-Obvious Relationship Awareness, and we were helping with the casinos there. I mean, there was somebody that had 32 different names, different socials, 5 different dates of birth. Okay, they just use different combinations. How do you catch somebody like that?
Wow,
Entity-centric learning. Entity-centric learning does that.
Well, what about all those large, brand name analytics platforms out there? We could name the large companies and everyone would know them, but are you saying that they do not have this tool set built into their platform?
They probably do.
Yeah.
They're probably batch.
Gotcha.
You can search resolve data in real time, but many of them boil the ocean and create an imprint of who's who and who's related, but then it's static until you reload it next time. Okay. Many of them only do the figured out who's who, but don't do the relationship, so you can't see the graph of same household or groups that share the same email. And almost none of them are doing entity-centric learning, which is really important for fraud. We got used to PPP loan fraud. Like there was a number of PPP loan fraud programs that we were used in, and you're trying to figure out, hey, they got the same loan. Now some organizations got the same loan with exactly the same identifiers, like everything the same, and others did a little more effort to look a little bit different.
Well, then why is it? You've talked about this a little bit, but why is it difficult? Because you'd think this is a problem that analytics platforms have dealt with a long time. But so what is challenging about entity resolution?
Man, there are 1,000 edge cases.
Okay.
And it is fascinating. You meet people that have already spent decades on it. I'm telling you, this is the art of the dark science. Okay.
Okay.
You just in the subject of names, how to compare names. When you compare names, you can have name roots like Dick, Dickie, Richie, and Ricardo, and Elizabeth and Beth. Okay.
Right.
And how do names transliterate into other cultures? And then, by the way, in the culture of the name, how to match a Spanish name with 5 parts is quite a bit different than how you'd match a Chinese name. And it turns out if the name is Arabic, then you really should know that the words bin and hajj aren't part of the name.
Right.
Just names. Then you go on, social security numbers. Okay, certain numbers are valid and ranges and certain aren't. Some social security numbers were used on billboards in the 70s for advertising.
Okay. They're probably not too valid at this point.
Right. It just goes on and on and on. And what has happened historically is as you get more data sources and more features, like, now we got Twitter handles. Oh, right. Yeah. So as you get more features, you would, you get more data sources and more features, and you have more combinations of things. If this and this is true and that doesn't disagree, it's good. And how do you set the weights? And as you get bigger, more robust systems with big data, you end up with like a pretty deep list of combinations of things that need to match. And there's only a few people in your company that may be the experts at that. Maybe they've left and nobody even remembers all the config.
Right.
And that's one of the big breakthroughs that we had as a new technique I came up with called principle-based entity resolution. And
which is give us a nutshell.
Well, I will first give you the Reader's Digest version. You have a kid. I have a lot of kids. You have a kid. You catch them throwing rocks at cars. So you tell them, don't throw rocks at cars.
Right.
The next day, they're throwing rocks at buses. You're like, hey, don't throw rocks at buses. A couple months later, they're throwing ball bearings at SUVs. You're like, hey, don't throw ball bearings at SUVs. How many rules do you need? Are they going to be in their 30s? You're like, don't throw iPads at people on Segways.
Right.
You'd need 10,000 rules. But if you can teach a principle, like, hey, don't throw things at other people's stuff.
Yes.
With some exceptions, like they have scissors and they're running at you and they're evil. Okay.
Sure.
But if you got to get to principles, and the big breakthrough on our engine at Senzing, which is our 6th generation engine. I sold my 5th generation engine to IBM, and this project that we have is a project where I was for $50 million. If we start over, we can do it right.
Oh. We
did it on this new method about principles. And so it turns out there's just a very small relative number of principles, and they work across people, companies, cars, boats, planes, vessels. I guess you could use it for asteroids. Our main specialty is people and company data, but we really generalized it so you can do all of those all at the same time without any config. It is the real breakthrough. It's very different.
All right, so it's the breakthrough here in 2022. It is the breakthrough. What if we look ahead several years, a few years, middle of the decade? What is the future of entity resolution? Will we get to a point where, like, well, no, the systems really have that down? We're used AI. We're all good with entity resolution. We figured it out. Is that going to happen? And or what do you see in the future?
Well, what we're on the cusp of right now at Senzing is just democratizing it. It used to be only the most elite organizations in the world. Like, literally, if you don't have $1 million to spend or more, you can't have good stuff. You just can't afford it. And I'm trying to make sure that the smallest initiatives, nonprofits that have, for them, their big data is 12,000 records that have duplicates in their nonprofit mailing list. I'm trying to make sure everybody in the world can have world-class entity resolution. And it's going to take a little while to get that available to everybody. I mean, it's available now, but to get the word out, make sure we're discoverable. But we're trying to just fix this so people can move on and work on other more interesting things.
I like that. It's really great that you're making it accessible to those small organizations. That's a great service.
Yeah, it's really exciting. An example of a place that it was used in this last year is in the state of Utah. The clean slate law is, if you had certain kinds of felonies, like, for example, around marijuana, you're going to have your felony expunged. And that means you get access again to voting and certain kinds of jobs. And there's a matching problem. There's entity resolution in there. And our Senzing product was used for that. The folks at Code for America did that with our product. And, 250,000 people had their records accurately expunged. It's just, it's just accessible to everybody now.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's somewhere out there there's a data privacy expert, or that individual thinks, well, Big Brother is getting better and better at tracking our records. We like the sound of entity resolution, but we don't like the fact that they're getting better at tracking us. Is there an issue there or not? And I hear your voting example. People actually can make a vote against, so it's actually positive. But what are your thoughts about data analytics and civil liberties?
It's worse than that. I worry about somebody in a faraway place outside the U.S. using entity resolution to target a minority ethnic group, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, you just have to think. You have to think about that. On one level, it's like, we have a pencil over here, and now most people use pencils for good things, but every now and then somebody writes a hit list or stabs somebody in the neck, with the number 2 pencil. Right. So, we made a cognitive decision to not host anybody's data. I also didn't want to ever have a breach, so it can't get repurposed and used for ways people didn't anticipate. Right. But the consequence on that is that organizations can use it, and there's no phone home. We don't know how it's used. For the most part, I will tell you, though, it helps organizations make sense of the data they own. They got the blue puzzle pieces in this hand, the red puzzle pieces in that hand, and they're missing the obvious. Now, what marketing, sure, but fraud, synthetic identities, the amount of waste that's happening in healthcare fraud is just stunning.
Is it? Okay, it's really big.
Yeah, I've heard some estimates. I can't remember. They're all so big, I can't even fathom them.
Right, large
But
numbers.
on the privacy side, I do a lot of work in the privacy community, and we actually announced Senzing for the first time on International Privacy Day at the Privacy by Design conference because we baked in so many privacy features. And I'll tell you what one of them is. It's data tethering. It's if you happen to have a watch list, like in Vegas, there's a list of people who are banned from gaming.
Right.
Okay. They're on the exclusionary list by the regulators.
Yep.
But if there's a record on there that got there inappropriately or it had an error and now it's fouling an innocent person, data tethering is when a data source is contributing to entity resolution. If you correct a record or delete it, you should be able to find exactly that record in the system and take it out.
So it helps people. I mean, in terms of the civil liberty issue, it can help people.
False positives is one of the worst things you can do to people. Okay.
If you're on the bad list, you should not be on the bad list unless you really deserve to be on the bad list. So it's a liberating aspect. Yeah.
Yeah. And we also done a lot of work on favoring false negatives. Like you just don't want to be tapping on somebody's shoulder. And by the way, whether it's you're not letting them get access to immigration because you're doing a bad match, okay? Or you're not, there's a special promotional offer for a lower interest rate, and they just think you shouldn't have a lower interest rate. And so somebody's not even getting that. Maybe that's a case. But bad matching is a problem. So that's another privacy by design aspect in Senzing is to favor the false negative. Yeah.
Jeff, I think you said it. It's fascinating. I think it will be a major force in data analytics in the years to come. Thanks so much for sharing your insight today.
Thanks. I've dedicated my life to this, so it's really all I got.
it matters to you, and I think it matters to the larger world.
It's needed, and we're trying to make sure we can have it. So, and that makes it fun. That the team and I, most of the people on the team have been with me for 20 plus years.
Wow.
We actually love doing this. We haven't had a core engineer leave the company since we've launched in 5-6 years. Like we are passionate about this. Is all we do.
That's great. All right. Well, let's talk again soon.
It's been great talking.